Alright, Community Development Financial Institution Fund Investment Net. Community Development Funding Institution Fund is certainly not certain for profit. The Community Development Funding Institution Program and award with the purchase of capital and funds pursuant capital investment pursuant to the Public Law 103-325 with the Capital Development Fund Institution Fund with the restricted for owning more than 50% of the predictive awards, controlling with their operation investment responsible with the uniform with a non-voting equity security limited partnership interest with non-voting security equity security with a report with a fair value was realized with an unrealized hold of the gains lawful report with the shape of the net cash depending on the net result of the investment readily with a determined fair value recorded as such fair value. So the decision below the fair value with a measurement and with investment without readily determinable fair value with a record use with the measurement ultimately cost measurement minimum minus impairments plus with a minimum with a subsequent adjustments for the observable price for the ordinarily transaction with an equal similar investment same year issue with a limited department interest or the recorded in accordance with the equity method accounting by with a recognized prorated share of the investing with a profile profit loss with the savings of the net cost of time and the fair value of the annual investment below the cost of the team to the other term period results over the impairment to reduce the carrying amount over the fair value. Determine the impairment of the other temporary with the community development funding and investment fund with the control of the will of the it has of the ability to intend with the whole of the investment until the market price recovered to and evidence indicating cost investment recoverable outweighs and the evidence of the contrary of the evidence considered with the assessment included with the reason with the impairment of severity with the duration impairment with the change of the value so with the year to end with the forecast performance with the vesting with the general with the market condition of the industry and with the investing with the operating with the impairment of the charge for the net with the cost of the net cost basis with the investment established. Community Development and Funding Institution from the record no other temporary with the impairment increment with the other investments from the official year FYE September official year ending on September 30th, 2025 with the debt. Debt representative of the Community Development Funding in the Bureau of the People Treasury with the Financial Funding Bureau, the FFB with the Wisdom Care with the Fund Direct Loan with the Community Development Funding and Innovation Fund with the other aspect of the permissible borrowing authority with the borrowings payable to Treasury with the unsubsidiary portion of the direct loan subsidiary shows and show the incur with the government over the entire life of the loan, the debt repayments of the Treasury with the monies based on the collection of the loan receivable or unpaid reinstatement of the borrowing with a repayment related with the FFB with a representative of the principal loan band with the disbursement of the community development funding institution Bureau Grant Program, Borrowing Grant, Bureau Grant Program, Principal Repayments, the FFB with a quarterly semi-annual with collections received with a loan bearer with the interest cost of the carry with the expense with the incur with the report with the net program cost with the community development the funding institution, and the BGP with the TIP program, with the net cost set no with the 7 and more information is good with the related to debt. Contingencies in accordance with the SFFAS with the 5 of the accounting liability of the federal government, the community development and funding institution from the record of the material of the contingent liability of the meeting with the following criteria of the pet, with the exchange of the transaction occur with the future cash outflow with the probable future cash outflow mentioned with the yes liability recorded with either with the specific amount within the range amount with the sum of the amount with the range of the better estimate of the other amount with the range of the amount recognized with the amount within the range of the better estimate with the other estimate with the community domestic fund innovation with the recognized with the minimum amount with the range to scroll with the range with the description of the nature of the contingency liability for the loss of the contingency with the rising of the claim and the assessment with the litigation fines and penalty with the other source of the record with the probable liability has incurred. If the amount with the obligation can reasonably estimate the legal cost for the incurred with the connection with the loss contingency expressed with the incurred with the one more, but not all of the above with the criteria of the recognition whether there is reasonable with the possibility of loss, human domestic fund innovation with the scope of the material with the nature of the contingent liability along with the range possible loss of the estimate with the discrimination nature of the contingency with the community domestic fund innovation with the fund that did not recognize contingency contingent liability September 30th, 2025. Revenues of the funding force with the funding sources. Community domestic funding with the funding active with the primary fund with answer appropriation with the GSE with fee of the avenue. Revenue operations recognized with the financing source for the chain with the net positioning of the time with the community domestic fund innovation with the determinant of the grant recipient depending on the grant with the be allowed with the grant and with the war funds secure with the liability related administrative expense with the internal use of software cost incurred with the acquired with the investment for the 5 with the financial with the direct loan part of the initial with the direct loan subsidiaries. The community domestic fund with the receive with the fees for the GSE with the Housing Economic Recovery Act with the 2008 with the Public Law 110-289 with the first day with the GSE with the size with the annual allocation with the 4.2 with the base with the points for each of the dollar unpaid principal balance over the new business purchase over the CMF the Capital Magnet Fund received 35% of the allocation of the future over the annual accuracy base of the net of the realizable value considered recognized with the West and with the board accrual amount of the extra for the collective of the 1 year over the account receivable net line with the balance sheet with over the GSE funds represents of the non-exchange of the revenue report with the GSE fund with the other non-exchangeable the revenue with the statement of change with the net position. Fiscal year of 2024 with the capital domestic fund with the beginning with the receipt of the transfer of the fund with the treasury the ECIP with the public law 116 with 260 set us out in the statute with the treasury with the transfer all of the cash of the proceeds received with the connection with the investment with the include with the dividend with the interest payment the procedures of the sale of the investment capital domestic capital development funding institution fund with the financial assistance technical assistance ECIP with the transfer cash transfer of the treasury represented with a one-way flow of the reach over the capital development fund institution fund with the capital development funding institution with the recognize with the transfer of the finance control of the amount with the equal of the cash perceived with the receive of the roll with the of the transfer in out without reimbursement aligned with the chain of the charge of the net position competent and of the treasury with the capital development funding institution fund receive of the good and service over the other federal entity with the cap or an entity with the treasury with the no cost for the cost less over the full cost of the cost of the other entity with the no reimbursement for the capital development community development funding institution fund reported with the cost of the non-assigned with the program the with the net cost of the offset with the impute of the financing short for the change over the net position community development fund institution funds also retrieve the fee for the act with the community development fund institution with the BGP program with the small business with the job act for the 2010 with the first statute with the fees available to pay monthly with the community development fund institution fund based amount with the unpaid principal dollars with the bond issue collective fees and you with the reimbursement of the treasury with the administrative cost and with the community development funding institution BGP program with these fees with the representative exchange with the revenue record with the less earned revenue with the line with the program statement of the net cost which is associated with the revenue collected with the recorded within the gross cost line. Additional the revenue is earned with the interest earned the income of the direct loans under burst borrowing with the fee funds held by the treasury with the interest income with the reckoning with the determined with the collectible is recovered with the less earned revenue with the line with the associated program and the same with the net cost occasion with the community development fund institution fund receive with the dividends equity investment with the maybe with the fund with the operating income with the dividends recognized with the earned with the usually with the clear with the record with the less earned revenue with the community development funding institution program statement of the net cost. Custodial review of the community domestic fund institution fund with custodial collection representative with the non-net with the revenue include with the cash collected with the primary with the recovered and proper payment with the other revenue with all the amounts collected with the transfer of the general fund with the operating purpose of the U.S. government the community development fund institution fund recognized with the custodial revenue with the per period collection with the disposed of the shame and the reporting period with the custodial activity official year ending with September 30th, 2025 was immaterial. Net cost consists of the gross cost of less earned revenue with the community development funding institution fund with the representative of the gross cost of the community development funding institutional war funding administrative with the earned value with the net cost of the major program with the category of the administrative with the imputed cost that cannot reasonably allocate with the specific program with the report of the cost not a with the program lines with the statement of the net with the cost retirement plans, community development funding institution program, community development funding institution funds with employee with the participate civil service with the retirement service with the federal employment the retirement service with the federal employment the retirement service established in the enactment of the Federal Employee Retirement System Act of 1986. Pursuant to the law of the Federal Employee Retirement System and the Social Security automatically covered the most of the employees hired with the after the December 31st, 1983. Employees hired with the prior with the January 1st, 1984 were provided with the opportunity to join with the Federal Employment Retirement Service with the Social Security that remained with the CSR, the Civil Service Retirement System, Community Development Funding Institution Fund with a reckoning with the cost of the Federal Employee Retirement System and the Social Security with a contributed amount with $2.3 million with the fiscal year ending with September 30th, 2025. In addition to the Community Development Funding Institution employee with a participate within the Civil Service Retirement Service to have with 7% of the base salary withheld with contributed to the retirement fund. The Cdfi fund contributed the same amount and with the retirement fund with the Cdfi fund with the recognized cost of the Civil Service Retirement System contribution amount of $13.0 thousand for all employees with a savings account with the automatically established with the employee with can elect with the predetermined amount of the mixed maximum amount of the base salary with a deposit with the thrift savings plan with the community development funding institution fund with the makes matching with the contribution of the 4% of the Federal Employee Reserve System retirement system employee with a contribution with a thrift savings plan with account with additional 1% contribution automatically made with a thrift savings program over the community development funding institution fund with each of the employee with the community development funding institution fund with a recognized call over the thrift savings plan with a contribution amount with a $0.6 million with an official year ending with September 30, 2025. The Community Development Funding Institution Fund for the report costs associated with retirement plans gross cost line with respect with the program statement over the net cost with when the cost cannot with the regionally allocated with the particular program Community Development Funding Institution Fund for the report with the least cost with the cost not assigned with the program line and with the statement over the net cost. And the accrued annual leave. The annual leave of the compensatory leave of the curve of the liability of the earning of the employee with the actually reduce the leave of the take on the balance of the incurred of the liability of the account of the community with the use of the current pay rate, sick leave of the other type of non-vested leave of the expense of the leave, tax and reported within the gross cost line with the respective of the program statement over the net cost of the cost of the can be reasonably allocated with a particular program, community, domestic fund, institution, funds for the report of the costs associated with the accrued annual leave at which the cost is not assigned to the program line statement the net cost see note number to other liabilities for more information net position unexpected operation relative to the amount of spending with the authorized September 30th for the unliquidated unobligated not left for the reason me resigned or when withdrawn with the operation remain available the upward downward adjustment with the obligation until canceled. Community Development Funding Institution Fund with the representatives of the adjustment of the unexpected operation with the cancellation funds with the rescission of the statement of the change of the net position, community of the results of the operation, community of the result of the operation representative of the net result of the Community Development Funding Institution Fund operations not from the operation on exchange revenue with the other financing sources of the such since inception of the end of the fiscal year with the also include with the reduction of the cumulative result of the operation accrual with the related experience required funding with the future operation revenue with the assessment of the future funding with the requirements include with among other credit reform costs of the reestimates for the expense of the other contingent liabilities if applicable. P. The funds for the dedicated for the collection of the Community Development Funding Institution Fund with account for the revenue for the financial for the fund for the dedicated for the collection of the separately with the other fund for the Community Development Fund domestic Community Development Funding Institution Funds for the financial statement of the funds collected with the Capital Magnet Fund only Capital Development Funding Institution Fund program with the financial fund for the dedicated for the collections or with the composed entirely restricted fund for the collection of the GSE funds under the federal statute for the funds are specifically identified with the only designated activity benefits for the purpose of the Capital Magnet Fund with the administrator of the expense of the cover the GSE fee and collected with the as per the federal statement of the amount with over the Capital Magnet Fund with available to the secretary with the carry out with the competitive with the grant program C note 10 with the funds for the dedicated for the collection for more information. Alright, Q. The operation of the budget authority for the Capital Domestic and Capital Development Funding Institution Fund with the receiver of the funding for the operation with the U.S. Congress calculation with the GSE for the fee for the transfer the ECIP with the transfer receiver the Treasury Capital Development Funding Institution for the fund with the receiver of the operation U for the financial assistant award statutory limited to the annual operation with the operating concern with the incurred obligation operation with the core with the Capital Development Funding Institution Fund with the take action with that require the Capital Development Funding Institution for the making the payment of the publicly done of the federal entity with the basement on the statute with the K for the law with the love and God with the congressional and appropriated fund give the ministry with the manager such employment serve with the contract with the becoming the obligate with the Community Development Funding Institution fund with the enter with the written agreement with a third party for the appropriated fund with the support with the direct loan equity of the awards becomes obligate with the relevant party with the enter with the fully execute with the agreement include with the amount with the term and the repayment of the other key aspect with the arrangement with the appropriated fund with the GSE with the fee with the collect with the ECIP with the cash proceed with the with the Community Development Funding Institution Fund with the competitive with the grants award with the obligate with the Community Development Funding Institution Fund with the associated funds issue with the notice of the award of the all capital Community Development Fund Institution Fund with the liability with the coverage with the budgetary resource with the except with the amounts related to unfed funded leave achieve with no other liabilities for more information or taxes established as a component of the Treasury which agent for the U.S. government to the Capital Development Funding Institution Fund with accepted with the forms of the income tax imposed with the governing body with the federal state with the community wealth local and foreign government equity with no provision over their income taxes recorded. Fair value market measurement with such with investment observe with the market transaction market information with be available with the other investment with observe with the market transaction market information may not be available to have with the objective of the fair value with the measurement and with the both case with the estimate with the price of the ordinary transaction sell and assess asset or transfer liability between the market participant with the measurement day with the occur with the under with the current market with the condition with the Capital Development Funding Institution point of life with the provision of the fair value measure of the investment with the reckoning of the the scope of the fair value of the financial statement of the fair value of the hierarchy that distinguish between reservable the unreservable inputs for the recognized as follows: with level 1 inputs for the quoted price for the unadjusted for the active with the market identical assets for the liability with the capital development the funding institutional fund with the ability to access with the measurement date. Level 2 inputs for the inputs for the quoted price include with level 1 with the reservable for the asset with liability either with an indirectly with a directly. Level 3 inputs for the unobservable inputs for the asset with liability the input methodology with the valuing asset with liability not necessarily indicative risk associated with the asset with liability. See the note investment net with the information with the financial assistance related fair with the value measurements. T risk and uncertainties of the use of the estimates. Preparation of the financial statement that conform with the GAAP with the required with the management that made with the estimate with the assumption of the effect with the reported amount with the asset with liability with the disclosure contingent asset with the liability with the date with the financial statement that reported with the amount with the revenue with the expense with the during with the reporting period with the actual with the result with the good difference with the estimates with the items subject to the such estimate with the included investment record as a fair value allowance for the subsidy related with the FCRA accrues the grants award expense with the actual revenues for the fees. From GSE with a compromise with the Federal National Mortgage Association for Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation for the Community Development Funding Institution Fund with the fee for the treatment of the risk concern with the withdrawal of the direct loan program, certain credit risk with the potential with the no measure with the help with the remote official loss with the failure with the borrower with the counterparty with the performance according with the underlying contractual obligation, Community Development Funding Innovation Funds takes on the possible credit risk with which make with the direct loan with the non-federal with the Community Development Funding Institution Program with the Community Development Funding BGP program was undisturbed direct loan with the funding with the commitments solely with each program with the Community Development Funding Institution Fund with the directive with the credit member program received the using of the credit form modeling with the subject with the use of the estimate of the forecast that we have in the air with the uncertain with the refer to the accounting policy of the estimated loan receivable net no for loan receivable net with the additional information with the quarter with the Community Development Funding Institution Fund rec with the GSE with the fees with the revenue accrual with the base with the fees estimate with the GSE form 10Q with the 10K with the disclosure with the receivable subsequent with the reduce with the GSE with the fees receive with the receive with the refer with the accounting policy with the revenue with the financing service with the note 3 with the accounting receivable net for the decision related with the GSE with the for revenue accruals amount based on the estimate with involved with the numerous assumption with the varying with the potential with a significant degree with the judgment with the uncertainty with the therefore with the accounting estimate with the assumption with the may change over the time with the actual with the result that could differ materially from those estimates with the disclosure of the entity with the related parties the SS with the AAS with the reporting entity with the require with the financial statement with the balance activity consolidation and entity with the include with the treasury with the component with the entity with the making with the filing principle with the inclusion for the consider with the whole with the entity with the include with the budget of the U.S. all known as the present budget of the U.S. government hold with the majority owner interest and 3 with the U.S. government have the control of the risk of lawful exemption expectation of the benefit and 4 it would be misleading to exclude such entity with the SFFAS 47 and also provide the guidance to a fair assessing whether an organization meet with the inclusion principles with the reported disclosure entity with the related party disclosure entity with the related parties but not considered with the component of the Community Development Funding Institution Funding report with entity with the thus only disclosure with the notes of the Community Development Funding Institution Fund with the financial statement as applicable the principle that prescribed with the SFAS 45 see with the no entity with the dean with the disclosure entities will leave with the party of the September 30th 2025 Fund by balance treasury with the fund balance treasury with the increase with the receive of the operation with the reoperation continue with the resolution allocate for the transfer of the reimbursement with the federal agency with the receive with include with the transfer of the investment with the receive of the treasury with the ECIP with the buying collection with the GSE funds representing the restricted funds with the confines for the used in financing of the capital magnet fund with the fund with the balance treasury can also be increased with the amount with the collected with the credited operation with the funded account fund balance treasury reduced with the disbursement paid with the paid liability purchase asset with the goods and services financing, authorized financing, award, and purchase. Commitments 3, commitments to an expired operation cancel with the Community Domestic Fund, the institution on the make of the transfer of the reimbursement for the entity with the non-federal entity with the general fund with 3 with the sequential sequestration rescissions of the appropriation of the September 30, 2025 with the chief of the fund balance of the treasury consisted of the following. Due for the unobligated balance of the restricted with the base of the annual legislation and the requirements of the enabling and authority fund presumably available to the U of the fiscal year unless otherwise noted over the annual of the operational link with the unobligated balance of which are on the statement of the budgetary of the resource of the representative of the amount of the have the property of the Congress with the have of the bank committed with the specific purpose of the obligation of the portion of obligated with the balance included with the amount of the appropriated prior fiscal year with the have expired with the not available to define with the new obligations to all of the unappropriated amounts of the sale of the requiring budget authority in order to become available to fund new obligations. The obligated balance will not yet disbursed representative of the amount of the designated of the payment of the goods service of the community development funding institution fund with the S of the not receive of the goods with the service of the fund with the receive of the payment of it has not been given the situation restricted the fund with the temporary unavailable until even the restriction has been satisfied with legislation with an act of the restriction of the following line items to give the component of the fund balance of the treasury of the post of the budget status of the account adjustment with the required reconcile of the budgetary status of the non-budgetary fund balance within the treasury report of the balance sheet of the adjusting of the borrowing authority. Borrowing authority is the budgetary status for the board of the chairman of the budgetary resource of the funding balance of the treasury of the community development funding institution fund credit program of the using borrowing authority with the financing loans referred to the note 11 the chairman of the budgetary resource for information of the adjustment of the other adjustment of the representative of the temporary reduction of the new budget of the authority related with the transfer of the ECIP with the cash proceeds GSE fee with the community development funding institution BGP for the administrative fee for the such subject for the sequester area and 3 accounts receivable net with account of the receivable net primary representatives GSE for the community development funding institution from the crew with the half of the not collected the reported crew with the receivables expected to be collected within 1 year. Community development fund institution of the fund with its non-subject along with the balance of the uncollectible amount with the determined with the risk of the not collecting estimate with the GSE for the is removed during fiscal year with the community development funding institution fund collected 116.5 million GSE fee with the reported accrued with the GSE fee with the receivable with the $89 million with the account receivable net and with the balance sheet with the September 30th, 2025 with the 4 loans receivable net with the community development fund with the administrative with the 2 credit program with the community development fund institution BGP with the community development fund institution program to design private funding and assistance with the community development funding institution with the direct loan with the delay with the net with the direct loan receivable include with the loan principal to pay payment with the interest with the fee with the trade with the exchange transaction net loan receivable value asset with the relay with the direct loan with the not the same with the expect with the proceed with the same selling with the loan with the net loans receivable represent with the present value with the error estimated net cash inflow with the discount with the average rate with the marketable treasury with securities with the similar material with the expected with the sale with the proceed with the reflect with the estimated fair value with the pro to note 1 summary with the accounting policy and entitled with the loan receivable to net with the initial with information community development funding institution fund does not disperse with any of the direct loans prior to the FCRA in action. The community domestic fund innovation with the fund accrued with the interest of non-performing the loans with until the date of the default with the on which with the community development funding institution fund with the recovery of the remnant of all of the outstanding with the principal and interest owned non-performing loan is defined with any delinquent loan wherever the unawarded recipient has not been made with the attempt of the payoff of the loan owed community development funding institution from the any loan referred to the collection community development fund presents with the direct loan with the balance sheet with the line item of the loans with the receivable with the balance with the direct loan program along with the subsidies as September 30, 2025 consisted of the following. The negative and positive allowance for the subsidy cost of the September 30, 2025 will reflect the community domestic funding institution fund projection as of the day of these programs with the result of the net revenue with the net cost of the respectively after the account with the principal loan repayments with the interest and the fees. The total direct loan with the disbursement fiscal year ended with September 30, 2025 consolidated of the following subsidiary cost component of the new direct loan disbursement of the program fiscal year ended with September 30, 2025 consisted of the following. Community Domestic Fund performed annual financial statement of reassessment of the credit program cost for the September 30, 2025 of the reestimate of the result of the net downward reassessment of the decree of the cost of the program consisted of the following. The Community Domestic Funding VGPs total downward reestimate of the fiscal year 2025 with driven in the shame of the performance of the assumption of the actual performance of the day with the actual program funding with the cost of the performance assumption anticipated the overall revenue program due with the lower the default of the projection future year cash flow with specific guidance to Office Management Budget A11 and Section 185 of the Community Domestic Fund Innovation Fund refined with the methodology with calculating the interest rate of the component of the subsidiary cost reestimate of the fiscal year 25 of the interest of the reassessment was calculated modified with the version of the cash flow of the projection of the budget during the budget formulation of the account with the difference of the benchmark treasury rate between the budget formulation and the loan disbursement. Community Domestic Funding Innovation Program downward reestimate with its fiscal year 25 of the primarily due to the improvement of the actual loan performance borrowed with the financial position as well as the exemption of the lower default rates. Total subsidy expense of the direct loan with the include with the interest of the differential of the financial of the default of the DS and of the fiscal year ended with the September 30th, 2025 consists of the following total each of the program subsidy calculated the percent subsidiary rate subsidy of the direct loans obligated with the cohort with the fiscal year ended with the September 30th, 2025 consists of the following the community development funding institution BGP program subsidiary rate of the calculated rate for the evaluation of the actual of the direct loan over the term subject to the office management budget of the review of the community domestic funding institution with the program subsidiary rate with consistent of those published of the federal credit supplement of the current year budget subsidiary rate of the disco of the pertinent until the current year cohorts for the rate that cannot be applied with the direct loan with the disbursement for the during the current reporting year yield of the subsidiary expenses subsidy expense of the new loan for the current year with the good control of the disbursement of the loan both for the current year cohorts prior to the year cohort subsidiary expense of the report of the current year also with the reestimate of the reconciliation subsidy with the cost of the allowance of the fiscal year ended with September 30, 2025 consists of the following. The Capital Domestic Funding Institution Fund for the Directly Loan Program and the Ministry expand with the reckoning of the fiscal year ended with September 30, 2025 consultative and consisted of the following. 5. With advance and pre-made for all of the grant program with the Ministry of the Community Domestic Fund and Investment Innovation Fund with the exemption of the BEA program with which structure with the reimbursement program with the Community Domestic Fund and Investment Innovation Fund with the next grants award to payment and anticipated qualified expend with the recognize them as advances to adjust for the advance for the eligible of the grantee with the heads of the incurred with the reporting date with the Community Domestic Funding Innovation Fund relies on the actual use of the awarded grant with the grantee with the standard form 425 of the Federal Financial Report with the standard form 425 fiscal year ended with September 30, 2025 with the Community Domestic Funding Innovation Fund with the leverage of the standard form 425 of the reports of the determined adjustment of the advance for the eligible grant with the expense of the incurred from the Community Development Funding Institution Program of the NCA for the Community Development Funding Institution Rapid Response Program Emergency Response Program and Small Dollar Loan Program and the Capital Management Fund, Magnet Fund. Reconciliation Capital Community Development Funding Institution Fund Grant Award Advance Balances based on the grant with the disbursement accrued of the grant expense of the report of the program fiscal year over the end of the September 30, 2025 consisted of the following. 6. Investment with a net with the investment net include with the non-federal and non-voting common stock with the investment hold with the profit of the community capital domestic funding innovation program and awards with the capital development funding institution fund with a limited partnership and into the table below present with a fair value with the measure of the hierarchy classification of an investment type of the September 30, 2025. Simple as that with the capital development funding innovation fund with the borrow with the FFB with the treasury with the fund with the disbursement for the new direct loan with the subsidy with the reestimate associated with the capital development funding BGP program and the Capital Development Funding Innovation Program restrictively outstanding debt with the September 30, 2020 for the effectively interest rate with a range of the 1.33% with a 5.5% of the maturity date with a range of the September 30, 2020, September 30, 2020, 58 for the outstanding with the debt with the September 30, 2025. The debt with the Capital Domestic Fund, Community Development Funding Innovation Fund with the September 30, 2025 consisted of the following: increase the outstanding debt balance with 165 million with a driven increase of the Capital Community Development Funding Innovation BGP related borrowings repayment to 162.4, increasing capital Community Development Fund Innovation Program related borrowings and net repayments of 2.6 million. Community Development Fund Innovation of the fund accrue for the interest expense of the outstanding of the debt with the pays annually on the September 30th of the fiscal year and the September 30th, 2024 with the Capital Community Development Funding Innovation Fund recorded interest expense of the total amount of 40.2 million related to this debt. All debt with the related interest cover the intergovernmental with the coverage of the budgetary resources. Additional detail of the borrowing authority note 11 statement of budgetary resources. Other liability with the line item of the balance sheet consists of liabilities covered with the net requirement of the budgetary resource of the Community Development Funding Innovation Fund of the liability September 30, 2025 represent current liabilities consist of the following. As of September 30, 2025, the Community Development Funding Innovation Fund did not have the outstanding of the non-current other liabilities. Commitments of the grant award commitment with the Community Development Funding Innovation of the fund with the grant award commitment with the representative of the unpaid with the prepaid grant award amount with the obligated with the Community Development Funding Innovation management. Unpaid grant award commitments are not considered a liability year end of the award with not during do not meet with the condition of the payment of September 30th. Prefer with no 8 the reliability additional information on the prepaid grant with award commitment. The total is 773.2 million with a September 30th, 2025 with a preferred to know with 11 of the state with a budgetary reach with additional information given the movie development funding innovation with a BGB commitment with the ability with the undisturbed with a direct loan with a commitment with a total 972 million with a September 30th, 2025 with the actual with the disbursement structure with the borrower with the task fund with the certain condition with the funding of the such loans covered with the community development funding and innovation of the fund established borrowing authority with the referred to note 11 statement with the budget authority additional information. Direct loan subsidy commitment of the direct sum subsidy commitment to 403.8 million September 30th, 25 with the related financing account subsidy undisbursed with the direct loans with the community domestic community development funding innovation BGP and community development funding innovation program purchase commitment with a purchase commitment of 12.2 with a million September 30th, 2025 with the related remaining with the obligated portion of the contract with the purchase order will leave with the goods and service not received. Economical Mobility Corp's commitment with the commitment of the 1.9 million September 30th, 2025 with the related to the Economic Mobility Corp's funding for the Economic Mobility Corp. enacted with Public Law 116 and 260 with the operating conjunction with the corporation with the National Community Service and Economic Mobility Corp. With the place of the National Service of the member of the territory with its community development funding innovation with the enhanced ability to provide with the financial literacy, financial planning, budgeting, saving with the other financial counseling activity distress and underserved areas. Funds further dedicated to the collection of the community, the capital management fund with the only with the community development funding and institution fund program and the finance for the fund for the dedicated to collections for the capital development fund and institution funds for the core of the community development program activity total asset for the total liability and position evident account for the operational level of the capital management capital magnet fund activity related with the fiscal year on the September 30th consistent with the following. Statement of budgetary resource. The statement of budgetary resource will present with the information on the total budgetary resource available to capital development funding and institution funds with the stats of the resource with net adjustment with the unobligated with the balance for Alpha 4th, the October 1st with the net adjustment unobligated balance for Alpha 4th with the October 1st with the September 30th, 2025 with the following. And undelivered orders with the representative of the goods with the order of the obligated with which have not been received with the include with the orders of the which with the capital domestic with the fund and innovation with the has been paid advance for the which with the delivery with the performance of the not yet with the curve of the undelivered order with September 30, 2025 with consisted of the following. Terms of the borrowing, capital development funding institution have the permanent identifier with the borrowing authority with the FFB with the subsidy with the director with the loan with the capital community development funding institution BGP with the I'm sorry if I said capital development, I meant community development funding institution program, direct loans with a negative subsidy portion of the BGP program, represented with the borrowing payables treasury with the Office of Management Budget 811, Section 185, that defines the repayment of requirements of the interest, the expense of the derivative, the calculated base for the balancing of the borrowing with the and outstanding with the borrowing pay payment that's activity occurred during the fiscal year with the undisbursed borrowings earned interest and same with the rate of the financial account of the pay with the debt with the loan with the treasury with the FFB with the principal with the interest collection with the exceed with the interest the expense with the due with the community funding institution fund receive with the excess for the payment of the principal the interest with does not with exceed with the interest with the expense with the due with the capital development funding institution with the fund will the borrow with the balance of the capital development funding institution fund with the make with the periodical principal the payments with the base on the annual cash of the payments of future of the disbursement of the need referred to notice of the debt with the information. So capital development, community development funding institution available borrowing authority with the related change with the available borrowing authority September 30, 2025 is consistent of the following reconciliation of the presidential budget of the budget of the U.S. Austin of the presidential budget of the actual of the number of the fiscal year 2025 with the not published at the time of the financial statement that were issued. Fiscal year of the 2027 of the president budget with the expected with the published with the Office of Management budget with late with the February 2026 with available from the U.S. government publishing office of the official year of the 2026 with the budget presidential budget with the reconciliation with the community domestic funding institution funding statement of the budgetary resource of the amount of the fiscal year 2024 with the only difference between the two documents were due to the rounding legal arrangements of affecting you for the unobligated balances. The use of unobligated balances was restricted based on the annual legislation requirements enabling the authority funding of the presumed the level of the only one of the official year with the unless otherwise noted with the annual operational language unobligated balance unexpired with the community development funding institution fund with the accounted fund with the sums of the available with the next fiscal year with the new obligation lift with the sum of the restriction and have them enslaved on funds without a law. In this situation, when the restricted funds were temporarily unavailable until the region with the restriction have been satisfied, legislation enacted to remove the restriction and amounts for the express with the community development funding institution fund account fund symbols with not available to new obligations, but with maybe you would make an adjustment reflect with the make of the disbursement of liquidated obligations to the creative before the budgetary authority expired. Reconciliation of the net cost of the operation budgetary outlay with the reconciliation net cost of the operation budgetary outlines now with the outlay with the purpose of the depict the difference between the proprietary information of the budgetary account information of the community domestic funding institution predatory financial accounting and information with an intent of the depict of the U.S. government financial operation financial position presented with the accrual of payments going with the government accounting principle with the recognition of the assets liability with the collection of the payment of respectively with the have and have not made contrary to the budgetary accounting information with the use of the plan control purpose with include with the net outlay will reflect part both of the recipient and use of the cash of the well with the full federal deficit with the reconciliation net cash of the presented with the accrual base of the net outlines presented on the budgetary base with the reflective relation between the proprietary accounting and the budgetary information reconciliation serve that is not only identify with the cost paid with the past of those that will be paid in the future, but also to show the integrity between the financial and budgetary accounting. Fiscal year of ending with September 30, 2025 with the reconciliation not cover the community development funding institution funding operation with the community development funding institution fund outlay with the net consisted of the following. Required supplementary information unaudited. Combined statement of the budgetary resource with the budget mandatory account statement of the budget resource with the fiscal year ended with September 30, 24 with the disaggregated with the major budget account with the community development funding institution consisted of the following. Other information unaudited summary financial statement audited management shown with the following table summary of the community development funding institution funding financial statement summary financial statement and supplementary management assurance. Appendix to Glossary Accounting, BEA Program Bank Enterprise Award, CDE, Community Development Improvement, Cdfi, Community Development Financial Institution, Bond Guarantee Program, Equity Recovery Program, Community Development Financial Institution Funds, Capital Development Financial Institution, Rapid Response Program, Capital Management Agnet Fund, COVID-19 disease, civil service retirement, depository institution initiative, emergency capital investment program, economic mobility corp financial assistance, federal accounting standards advisory board, federal credit reform act of 1990, federal employees retirement system, federal financing banking, federal financing management improvement act, federal manager financial integrity act, bureau of the official service administrative of the resource center of the official year ending. And GAAP, Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, GSE, Government Sponsored Entities, HFFI, Healthy Food Financing Innovation, Native American Community Development Funding Institutional System Program, New Market Tax Credit Program, Office of Management Budget, Public Law, Property Plan Equipment, Small Dollar Loan Program, Standard 425, Federal Financial Report Statement, Federal Financial Accounting Standards, Thrift Saving Plans, Technical Assistance, and the United States. And that was a reading of U.S. Department of Community Development and Financial Institution Fund, and that's by the U.S. Department of Treasury.